Hello everyone, my name is Oishiki. At first I would like to say that please kindly subscribe my channel. So today I am going to read Ramayana part 16. And yes, I would also like to inform that the ones who want to watch Ramayana part 15, they can get the video link from the description box. Okay, so now let's begin with our story. Uttar Ramayan. After the crowning of Rama, he thanked his guest in many ways. He expressed his indebtedness to them for life. It was time for all of them to return to their kingdoms and attend to their duties. Hanuman stayed next to his deity Rama. Many years passed by, and Rama ruled the city with the help of his beloved brothers and able ministers. Sita was now expecting the heir to the throne. Rama asked her wish, and she replied that she wanted to visit the hermitage and experience the meditative quietude of the same. Rama promised to send her the next day. Rama had devised many ways to track the happenings within his kingdom. He had a team of spies that went about in the kingdom to find out the real thoughts of the people about administration and their daily problems. That night, while Rama was discussing the same with his trusted spy Bhadra, he was taken aback by the rumors that were doing rounds. It was a washerman who had disowned his wife, who had spent the night in another man's village. Though it was only out of compulsion and need for a safety, he thanked about how Rama could accept Sita back into his heart when she had remained with the Rakshasas for such a long time. Rama was aggrieved and pained at these words. He was in great dilemma, for people saw him as the trailblazer of the eerie, and he could not believe that he was receiving ridicules in return to his effort towards them. It was a difficult decision for him, wherein he had to think from the standpoint of a king and not as a husband of his beloved wife. He dismissed all the courtiers and sought the company of solitude to ponder over the matter. He knew that Sita was pure and sane had been testified by Agni himself. Yet he could not silence the people. It was a matter of decorum in his kingdom, it being the foremost duty of the king. And so he decided to excite Sita. Rama summoned his brothers to his chamber. They were worried when they saw pale-faced Rama and bowed before him, asking about the reason. Rama explained to them how the people of Ayodhya held him in contempt. Being born the eldest into a great family as the Raghu dynasty, I am responsible for the fame and name that our ancestors have carried. He said, I trust my wife, and we all know that Agni himself testified her purity. But I cannot let a sandal ruin the heritage of our past. He sighed and announced in great pain, I have thus decided to excite Sita. The news came as a shock to the brothers, and they stood speechless with overflowing eyes. Lakshmana, Rama called out, take Sumantra along and drive Sita to the outskirts of the kingdom and inform her about Sage Valmiki's hermitage on the banks of the Massa river. She wanted to visit the hermitage. Let her wish be fulfilled. Rama sent his brothers away and himself spent the night in his chamber, not wanting to face Sita, lest he shall weaken in his decision. The next morning, Lakshmana informed Sumantra of his responsibilities. Sita was delighted and she packed beautiful clothes and jewels for the wives of the sage. They left the palace and together with Sumantra and Lakshmana, Sita reached the banks of Ganga. Across the river, Lakshmana told her the orders that he was summoned to the king's dilemma and his cruel decision despite the fiery ordeal itself. Sita was grief-stricken and fell on the ground. She expressed her disbelief in being treated the way she was and wondered what sense of her past life had created causes for the fruits that she received in this life. She remembered being a true companion to her husband and forbearing the hardships of exile with him, and reasoned why she should be subjected to such cruelty. But Lakshmana did not have any answer to it. His silence was a hint enough to Sita that his reasoning was fruitful. Lakshmana was forced by order to leave Sita in the wilderness and to return immediately. While Sita, staring into infinity, her tears all dried up, she was discovered by children from Sage Valmiki's hermitage. They immediately took her to the sage, who identified her instantly. The sage had great meditative powers, and He had already learned the sequence of the events. He was aware of Sita's grief and also understood that no amount of consoling words could heal the scars of her hurt. He left her with the woman ascetics and introducing her, asked them to take great care as she was in a fragile state, both in body and mind. Thus, the women ensured that they would not only keep her comfortable but also lighten her spirits by talking about beautiful things. It was in this peace and tranquil hermitage that 7 months later Sita gave birth to two twins, Lava and Kusha. Sage Valmiki, who had authored the Ramayana with great labor, knew what was coming forth and prepared for the Lavakusha Kanda. The astronomical calculations revealed that Lava and Kusha would be great rulers and would grow up to be the image of Lord Rama himself. The sage took all the care and dedication to raise them in the lap of nature. The sons grew up to be brave and compassionate, and they regarded their mother in the highest. Sage Valmiki began to teach them the verses of the Ramayana, and they began to recite them in their beautiful voice. The sage had taken all the pains to train them in the art of war and statesmanship. At this time, Rama organized the Asvamedha Yagna, a beautiful horse of a rare breed was chosen for the occasion, and it was decorated beautifully with jewels and ornaments. A great many kings attended the yajna. It was an amazing sight as next to Rama was seated a golden statue of Sita. The yajna stood per excellence in its grandeur and distribution of alms and gifts. The air resonated with the chanting of the Vedic hymns. The kingdom rejoiced when the horse was released with the declaration that anyone who caught the horse will have to wage a war against Rama. Those who accept his lordship shall have to pay the taxes imposed by him. The horse was followed by a strong army led by Shatrughan. They moved through many cities and countries and were stopped by none. The kings heartily agreed to the lordship of great Rama. Soon they passed through the dense forest where Lava and Kusha practiced their skills of warfare. The two were fascinated by a beautiful horse and wanted to play with it. They read the declaration and were ready to wage a war for its sake. Soon the army followed the horse and they discovered that the horse was tied to a tree. Shatrughan flared up, but when he looked around, he found two tender ascetics aiming their arrows towards him. He was assumed at the sight and tried to know the reason out with the children that it was a yagna horse and not for play, an amusement of little children, and that it should be released. However, Lover and Kusha were adamant and challenged him for war again and again. Annoyed, Shatrughan ordered his army to charge at him. Despite his great army on his side, Shatrughan could find no way in which he could stop the two children or take control of the situation. Finally, after a bitter war, Shatrughan tasted defeat at the hands of the little children, and the news reached Ayodhya. Lakshmana at once took charge and went over the hermitage in search of the two children. Encountering the two princes, he was impressed by their persona. He tried to persuade the two to give up the horse through dialogues, but the twins, in their playful mood, mocked at Lakshmana. This repeated request fell on deaf ears, and that it was enough to enrage Lakshmana. They soon indulged in a battle of arrows, and it was now that Lakshmana realized that the boys were more than a match for him. He was confused and befuddled by the divinity of the two boys. At the same time, he realized the responsibility on his shoulders of making the yagna a success. He took the name of Rama in a deep reverence and shoot an arrow at Kusha, who immediately fell unconscious. Grief-stricken Lover meditated a while and brought his brother to his senses. Lakshmana was surprised, but soon stood guard defending himself from the volley of arrows being aimed at him. Lover shot an arrow that left Lakshman confused, and suddenly he fell unconscious. The scared army fled the scene, leaving wounded Lakshman, and reported the episode to Rama. In the courtroom, Rama and Bharata wondered the reason for their defeat, and that too at the hands of two children. Finally, Bharata and the mighty monkey army with Hanumana left for the battlefield. It was a matter of moments that they too tasted defeat, and then none other than Rama himself stood before them. The children and Rama stood before each other, each in awe of the aura of the other. The children wasted no time in attacking Rama, but Rama only diverted them. This angered Hanumana, who attacked them with his mace, but the children quickly tied him and carried him to their hut. Mother, mother, they called out, we have a surprise for you. Happy in their return, Sita stepped out of the cottage only to be shocked at the sight of tied Hanumana. Hanumana was overjoyed at the meeting Sita and further rejoiced his defeat at the hands of none other than the sons of Rama. Sita immediately asked them to release Hanumana. She was fulfilled with pride at the bravery of her sons. When Hanumana told her about the capture of the horse and how the army was forced to pull back, Sita hurriedly went out to free the horse. When she met Rama, Sage Valmiki also returned from his trip and urged Lava and Kusha to greet their father. Rama's bow fell from his hands and he embraced his sons. He walked up to Sita, who merrily greeted him with a bowed head. She said in a somber tone, these are your valiant sons, and now that I have handed them over to you, I would take refuge in the lap of Mother Earth. Before anyone could move, Sita called out for Mother Earth with sudden tremors, and in a wink of the eyes, she was pulled into it. Rama wept bitter tears, and Lava and Kusha wailed aloud. Sage Valmiki consoled Lava and Kusha and reminded them of their duty towards their father and that how their mother would take pride in them once they did the same. Lava and Kusha returned to Ayodhya with their father, and at the right time they grew up to be compassionate and courageous rulers of the Raghu dynasty, holding the tradition of the dynasty in great stead. Okay, so story ends here. If you liked my today's video, then please like and comment my video, and also subscribe my channel to listen to more such stories and also to follow all my videos regularly. And don't forget to click on the bell icon. Thank you.